Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is the Faceless Artist and welcome back to Project Zomboid. In this video we'll be taking a look at the Moodlets, which can be found on the right side of the screen. Now basically, wait, it was hot here, but it's not hot here. Okay, in any case, let us begin. There are a lot of them. The first one we'll be taking a look at is bleeding. Now there are 4 stages: minor bleeding, bleeding, severe bleeding, and massive blood loss. Minor bleeding means that you have at least one wound and it will need to be disinfected and bandaged, but it can be held in check by being fed. Bleeding, you have at least 2 bleeding wounds. You will lose health over time if you don't sanitize the wounds and bandage them, and your carrying capacity will be reduced by 1 point. Severe bleeding means that you have at least 3 bleeding wounds, serious health loss over time if you don't disinfect them and bandage them, and your carrying capacity will be reduced by 1 point as well. Massive blood loss, massive bleeding for 4 or more wounds. It will lead to death unless you deal with it immediately. And your carrying capacity will be reduced by 1 point. But basically, if you get a scratch on the neck, neck wounds, scratches, lacerations, burns, and deep wounds will drain your health very rapidly. So whenever you're hurt, disinfect the wound quickly and bandage it up, and you'll be a-okay. The next moodlet is bored. This moodlet basically means that you didn't do anything, or you were spending too much time indoor reading skill books, or if you ate some stale or rotten food. That's how you get that moodlet. Bleeding you obviously get from being scratched, wounded, or if you step in glass or something along those lines. Basically, how do you remove the bored moodlet? You can read some literature, watch television, listen to CDs, radio, if you become panicked by fighting zombies, or if you just go outside and run a little bit. This moodlet will basically do nothing on its own, but if left unattended, it can lead to unhappiness. We'll get to that. In any case, there are 4 stages: getting bored, bored, very bored, and extremely bored. At getting bored, you basically have no effects yet. It occurs when your boredom is above 25%. When you're bored, your unhappiness will start to rise at a slow rate. That means that your boredom is above 50%. Now, there is no way to actually see this besides enabling, the debug mode, and going into this icon here, general debuggers, and going into moodlets and body. Here you can actually see all of the percentages. See, my boredom level is rising extremely high. So if I was to, for example, puff, my unhappiness will go a long way. But if I alleviate that, it will just start to rise again since I'm not doing anything. Basically, very bored, you get it when your boredom is above 75% and unhappiness rises at a higher rate. Extremely bored, that means that your boredom is above 90% and your unhappiness will rise even more quicker. Now, next up is has a cold. You can basically be exposed to cold weather or stay wet long enough and you'll catch a cold. You will cough and sneeze and that will attract nearby zombies. You can actually equip a tissue to deal with that. The cold will continue to worsen until it reaches maximum threats, whereupon it remains for a few days before it finally clears itself quickly. To cure a cold faster, you can stay well fed, get plenty of rest, and avoid being wet or cold. Basically, the first step is runny nose, occasional sneezing. You have a small chance of sneezing or coughing. That is when the cold reaches 20% strength. The sniffles, prone to sneezing. That is when the cold reaches 40% strength. You have a cold. which will basically make you sneeze and cough more often, making avoiding zombies difficult, and that basically happens when your cold reaches 60% strength. And you have a nasty cold. The character sneezes and coughs continuously, likely attracting zombies constantly, and that occurs when a cold reaches 80% strength. Now the next one is drunk. When you drink alcohol and you become intoxicated, it will increase your fatigue. Depending on the level of drunkenness, it also makes the character generate less health and delays driving controls. So don't drink and drive, obviously. The character's movement and vaulting climbing abilities currently appear unaffected. Basically you can run around fine and you can swing your weapons just as fine. There are basically 4 levels to this. The first one is a bit tipsy. Your drunkenness is above 10%, inebriated over 30%, plastered over 50%, and utterly shit-faced. This you and me against the world, I love you, that's when your drunkenness is above 70%. Now, I generally don't recommend that you do that, because why would you drink and drive? Next up is endurance. The character is exerted from physical activities, running, sprinting, vaulting fences, or swinging their weapon. They will walk, run, sprint, and swing weapons slower, and have a higher chance of tripping at very high exertion levels. Basically, that's self-explained, leveling up your fitness skill. And basically, once you get that lung moodlet, basically what you're gonna want to do is just sit down, and that will decrease your level exertion. And basically using heavier weapons and fighting zombies will exert you more. Now there are 4 levels of this. The first one is moderate exertion. You will basically become exhausted. You'll have 50% decreased melee damage. You'll have 0.07 decreased attack speed, which isn't that much. 10% increased chance to trip when you're running, sprinting, vaulting a low fence. 5% less chance to climb tall fences, and you'll be 15% slower walking, running, sprinting. That's basically when you're at 25% of total endurance. So that would be... this is for sleep. Okay. I'm guessing this is somewhere over here, but in any case, high exertion, can barely run. You'll have 80% decreased melee damage, 0.14 decreased attack speed, 20% increased chance to trip, 10% less chance to climb tall fences, 30% slower walking and running speed. You won't be able to sprint. That's when you're at about 50% of total endurance. Excessive exertion, can barely walk, 90% decreased damage, 0.21 decreased attack speed, 30% increased chance to trip when run, sprinting, blah 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 blah. Running and power walking disabled, exercise disabled. Basically that means you'll just be able to slowly walk. And the last one, which is exhausted, can barely move, 95% decreased damage. So basically once you see the lung emoticon, you basically just need to run away, get some rest, and that'll be it. You'll be all good to go. Okay, next up is the heavy load, which is the sort of the one that looks like a brain. That means that you're carrying too much. That will basically make you more clumsier and slower. The character cannot recover endurance by merely standing idle. Further movement will drain it. The chance to jump and stumble into zombies, running, jumping, and falling into country. Okay. Fairly heavy road, which means total weight 0.1 plus. They'll basically... once you go a little bit over your total load, you'll have a 13% increased chance to trip, 5% less critical chance, Reduced attack speed by 0.07. 8% less chance to climb tall fences, 15% slower walking, running, sprinting speed. At heavy load, which is 2 kilograms or more over your total load, 26% increased chance to trip when running and sprinting. Vaulting a low fence, 10% less critical chance, 0.14 less attack speed, 16% less chance to climb tall fences, and you're basically 30% slower. And sprinting is disabled. A very heavy load, total weight, so 4 kilograms over the total weight. Movement speed highly reduced. You're very encumbered, 39% increased chance to trip, 15% less critical chance, 24% less chance to climb tall fences, and 45% slower walking. And your running is disabled. You can only power walk, and your endurance will decrease slowly while moving. Endurance recovery stops entirely, and you will take damage until reaching 75% health. Next up is the extremely heavy load, which means 6 kilograms over your total carrying capacity. You'll be 50% to 52% increased chance to trip when running, vaulting a low fence, etc., etc. 20% less critical chance, 0.28 less attack speed, 32% less chance to climb tall fences, and 60% slower walking speed. Endurance decreases in a moderate rate when moving, endurance recovery stops entirely, and you will take damage until 75% health. Okay. Basically just dispose of the dead weight and you'll be fine. Next up is hypothermia. That is when you get too hot due to excessive heat exposure, or wearing a lot of clothing, or just running around in a lot of clothing. Basically, to fix this, remove extra clothing like a jacket or something like that. But it is highly impossible that you will reach the maximum level, since you will sweat it out. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4 levels. The first one is unpleasantly hot. Your first will increase slightly faster. When you're overheated, that will basically mean you will actually get more thirsty and more tired more faster, and you'll have a 34% decreased attack speed, and it'll be slightly harder to move. Sunstruck, that basically means faster still first and tiredness rate, 67% decreased attack speed, moderately reduced movement speed. Hypothermic, you're basically significantly faster first and tiredness rate, small reduction in awareness, so your field of vision will grow shorter, 90% decreased attack speed, severely reduced movement speed, and you will lose health very slowly. Basically, in order to avoid this, don't dress up in 50 fucking layers of clothing, and you'll be fine. Next up is hyperthermia. Hyperthermia, and this is hypothermia. Basically the opposite of the last one, only being cold. 4 levels as well: chilly, cold, freezing, and hypothermic. Chilly, basically nothing. Cold, 34% decreased attack speed, moderately decreased walking and running speed. Freezing, 67% decreased attack speed, significantly decreased walking and running speed. Hypothermic, 90% decreased attack speed, severely decreased walking and running speed, slowly loses health until at 1% health. Basically, in order to avoid this, what you're gonna want to do is basically add a bunch of layers of clothing upon you, or turn the air conditioner on in your car. The next one is the wet moodlet, and basically that happens when your character becomes wet, either by rain or just by going on in freshly washed clothes. Yeah, or by sweating, you know. You can remove it by going indoors, out of the rain, or by standing by a heat source, or getting a dish or a bath towel. And there are a couple of levels. The first one is damp. That basically means that there's no effect, that's just the first one that appears. The next one is wet, and basically there is no effects for this. At soaking, you'll have a chance of becoming really sick. When you're drenched, also the same. Basically no major effects on that one. First, hunger, boredom, There we go. Next up is wind chill. That basically happens when there's a storm and the wind is blowing really hard. And basically 4 levels: slightly wind chilly, uncomfortable wind chill, freezing wind chill, horrific wind chill. That means it's feeling more than 20 degrees colder than it actually is, and that will lead back to actually being cold. Now the next one is hungry. You basically get hungry over time and you will need to consume food. And that way you actually won't get hungry. And And basically, even if you're a complete fat ass, you can still die from starvation. They haven't implemented that yet, but in any case, there are 4 levels to this. In the negative side, that is negative hunger effects. When you're peckish, that means that your hunger is above 15%. When you're hungry, your carrying capacity will be reduced by 1 point, body heat generation will decrease, healing speed will decrease, and when you're very hungry, that will say reduced strength and healing. The character is very hungry, having not eaten for several days. Carrying capacity reduced by 2 points, body heat generation further decreased, healing speed moderately slower. Starving, health now just falling away, therefore that is what it will say on the moodlet. That means that your character is extremely weak and hungry. Body heat generation moderately decreased, that means you'll get colder. Carrying capacity reduced by 2 points, health slowly decreases until the character either dies or consumes enough food to stop starving. Basically, once you see that you're peckish, eat a little bit. If you get hungry, eat a little bit more. Now there are also positive hunger effects. That means when the hunger icon with the 2 forks is actually green, that will actually increase your carrying capacity by 2 points. You will regain your health faster, and basically this is not a buff that you should maintain because you will actually burn through your food supplies relatively quickly, so it's not something that you should be doing. But there are 4 levels as well: satiated, well-fed, stuffed, full to bursting. Satiated, knowing hunger entirely absent, the character is not hungry for now, the player heals faster and their strength is increased. Well-fed, tummy full, goodness is making its way through your system, that means that you're full, and you'll heal faster and have your strength increased. Stuffed, stomach contented, health and strength aided. The character is full and energized, the player heals faster and the strength is increased. Full to bursting, couldn't take another single solitary bite. The character is completely full and will not be hungry for a while, the player heals faster and the strength is increased. So ideally you want to be either satiated or stuffed, don't go full to bursting. And the next one is injured. That means that you have been injured in some way and you have lost health. This is a model that's an indicator for your remaining health, and it all depends on where the location of the wound actually is, and you can check that by going over here, and it'll show you on this diagram here. Basically, there are 4 levels: discomfort, injured, severe injuries, critical injuries. Discomfort, that means when health is below 80%, you don't have actually anything to worry about current at that moment. Injured, carrying capacity reduced by 1 point, and that is when your health is below 60%. Severe injuries, carrying capacity reduced by 2 points, health is below 40%. Critical injuries, not going gently into that good night, carrying capacity will be reduced by 3 points, and that means that your health is below 25%. Whenever you get this moodlet, just check where you're actually wounded, treat that, and the moodlet will disappear. Next up is the pain moodlet. That means that your character is in pain, whether from a wound, exercise fatigue, or injuries. And depending on your injuries, that's how much you'll be in pain, or if you just pushed it to the limit exercising, you'll be in agony. But there are 4 levels as well: minor pain, pain, severe pain, and agony. Minor pain, you somewhat hurt and you have 5% increased chance to trip when you're running, sprinting, vaulting a low fence. On pain, and you'll have 10% increased chance to trip. Movement, melee damage, attack speed will also decrease depending on where you actually have the injury, and your sleeping will be disabled. That's where the painkillers pop in. Severe pain, that is considerable pain, 50% chance to trip. Melee damage or attack speed, it also depends on the inventory, on the location of your injury, what will actually be affected. And in agony, 20% increased chance to trip, and exercising is completely disabled. Next up is panic. Pain can be solved over time, treating the wound, and actually popping painkillers. Now, panic can be treated with beta blockers, and stepping away from the zombies, or just chugging some alcohol. It all depends. If the character is panicking, usually due to zombies, we've all seen this moodlet. Okay, over time, Chatus Manic recovery speed increases every day. As time takes over to midnight, up to maximum of 150 days survived. So basically, after having 150 days survived, you should no longer actually panic. At that, and there are 4 levels: slight panic, panic, strong panic, extreme panic. At slight panic, you have 1.3% decreased critical chance. At panic, you'll have 2.6 decreased critical chance, 10% decreased melee damage, and you'll stand up faster from a sitting position. Strong panic will do 33.9 decreased critical chance, 20% decreased melee damage, guns deal 0.2 less damage. At aiming 6, the damage penalty is reduced to 0.1. Extreme panic, 5.2% decreased critical chance, 30% decreased melee damage, the character's vision cone will become narrower. Guns deal 0.26 less damage. At aiming 6, this damage penalty is reduced to 0.13. Basically just take some beta blockers. Okay, the next one is sick. That means that you're ill, whether you've eaten some bad food, or you were in the vicinity of many rotting corpses, or if you have been affected by zombie. Basically, you have 4 levels: queasy, nauseous, sick, or a fever. Basically, this moodlet can mean that you're dead, or it can mean that you're surrounded by dead bodies, which I've experienced and I had to burn them all, which I'll perhaps make a video about that. In any case, queasy means that you're beginning to become ill. You will actually get a temperature increase. Your health will start to decline if it's a zombification or poisoning. Nauseous, that basically means your carrying capacity is reduced by 1 point. You will generate heat much faster. You'll get slower healing if it's due to bad food or corpses. Your health will continue to decrease if it's zombification or poisoning. Sick. Your carrying capacity is reduced by 2 points. You get hotter much faster. Much slower healing if it's due to bad food or corpses. And your health reaches severe damage levels if it's zombification or poisoning. Fever. Your character is weak and hypothermic. Carrying capacity reduced by 3 points. Significantly increased body temperature generation. Health declines somewhat slowly if it's due to bad food or corpses. And your health will reach critical or highly critical damage level if it's zombification or poisoning. Then after that it's most likely death. And the next one is stress, which can appear when you are potentially infected, surrounded by zombies, covered in blood with the hemophobic traits. You'll wake when you wake up from a night terror, or if you haven't smoked cigarettes for a while with the smoker trait. And here it is, actually, because I am a smoker. And stress will basically reduce the damage of weapons, and chronic stress will lead to unhappiness. Basically, we have 4 levels: anxious, agitated, stressed, nervous wreck. Anxious, basically no effect yet. Agitated, 10% decreased melee damage. Unhappiness rises slowly. This is usually capped for smokers who haven't had a cigarette. Stressed, the character is highly stressed, 20% decreased melee damage. Your happiness rises much faster. Nervous wreck, 30% decreased melee damage, and your happiness will rise real quick. Basically, either smoke a cigarette, just relax, watch TV, listen to some music, basic stress relieving stuff. Next up is first, which basically comes about when you're not drinking water. And you can solve that by drinking pure water, not tainted water. 4 levels: slightly thirsty, purged, dying of thirst. When you're slightly thirsty, no effects yet. When you are thirsty, after about half a day without water, your carrying capacity will be reduced by 1 point. Your body will generate more heat. When you're parched, your carrying capacity will be reduced by 2 points. And you will actually be making body heat much more quicker and faster. Dying of thirst, that means over the day since the last drink, your carrying capacity will be reduced by 2 points. You will generate more heat from your body. Your health will slowly decrease until the character either dies or quenches their thirst. So basically, once you're actually thirsty, go ahead and drink some water. Next up is the tired one, which basically means if you don't get enough sleep, or if you overexert yourself by killing zombies, fighting zombies, working and stuff like that. Basically, you can sleep or take vitamins or coffee to reduce tiredness, and you currently cannot pass out from lack of sleep. There are also 4 levels: drowsy, tired, very tired, ridiculously tired. So drowsy will give you 50% decreased melee damage, vision cone starts to narrow, endurance regeneration greatly reduced. Tired, 80% decreased melee damage, vision cone and awareness radius further narrows. Very tired, 90% decreased melee damage, vision cone and awareness radius significantly narrows down. Ridiculously tired, so desperately inhumanely tired, 95% decreased melee damage, and basically your vision cone is compromised greatly. You can fix this just by sleeping. The next one is unhappy. If you're bored or stressed, or if you've eaten certain stale or rotten food items, you can actually become unhappy. And basically you can fix this by reading a book, watching TV, listening to music, stuff like that. There are 4 levels basically. The first one is feeling a little sad. No effects on that one. Getting a tad whippy, slightly slower timed reaction, so basically you'll experience lag. Depressed, minorly slower timed actions, more lag, severely depressed, even more lag. I mean, this will rarely happen to you.